Morning guys, my name's Jamie.
And I'm Jess.
And today we want to give you a behind the scenes tour of Cosmorax Coffee. Did you know that Cosmorax has been roasting coffee in the ACT since 1985? And today we're still one of Australia's leading specialty coffee roasters. If you want to perform at your peak as an athlete, make sure you try Cosmorax Coffee.
Hi everyone and welcome to this month's Bay Games online get-together. I'm Matt Locke, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Ed Morrison from Melbourne. Hi Ed, interesting times where you are. How are you doing, mate?
Good evening, Matt. Nice to see you again. Yeah, certainly interesting times in Melbourne. To be honest, I think from the outside looking in, it probably seems more dire than it actually is. There's a sense of camaraderie and community amongst folks in Melbourne at the moment. And that's not to downplay the seriousness of the situation, but I certainly feel like people know what's required and they understand that if they do the right thing, then we will get through this. How are you going, Matt?
Yeah, we're okay, thank you. It's I guess everyone around the country is kind of watching what's going on where you are, and unfortunately New South Wales had a few more clusters popping up around the C19 topic. So I guess we're all just kind of watching and seeing how that goes. And what is nice to say, certainly I can speak for locally, more and more people are just being a bit more compliant again, let's say. I think it had all become a bit relaxed. And yeah, people have tightened things up quite naturally without the government having to enforce that just yet. So fingers crossed that, yeah, I guess fingers crossed that things don't develop in the wrong direction. But okay, what I'd like to do is welcome our audience here within the Zoom room, and to everyone watching this right now on our website or Facebook page, or could be one of our guests' Facebook pages as well. Welcome to you all. If you have any questions you'd like to ask either of our guests tonight, just comment under the Facebook Live feed and we'll do our best to get to them. So don't be shy, we're live, and this is your chance to chat with a couple of legends. Of course, the same is true if you're here with us in the Zoom room. Pop your questions in the Q&A or the chat box, and you may get to ask your questions directly when we open up the floor a little later. Now, as many of you know, long before C19 stepped into our lives, the Bay Games has been supporting suicide prevention and mental health charities both here in Australia and in other countries around the world. And 2020 is a testing time for everyone. And we heard previously from the CEO of Are You OK, Catherine Newton, who was reminding us all that having meaningful conversations with mates and loved ones could literally save lives. This is such an important message, especially as C19 is far from over and people continue to be displaced and isolated. Now, we may well touch on the subject of all things mental health, and in particular, mindset, as we chat with our guests this evening. And in fact, our first guest this evening is an obstacle course racing legend. And in fact, he's the current reigning Asia Pacific Spartan Champion. He's also the founder of a training series called the McKenzie Method, which is underpinned by the belief that training hard and staying consistent with your programming, nutrition and recovery will enable you to crush your next race. He's also someone whose mantra is get comfortable being uncomfortable. And allow me, with that said, to welcome Mr. Liam McKenzie. Liam, good evening. It's great to have you with us. How are you doing at your end?
Evening. Thanks for the intro. Appreciate it. It's great to be on here tonight to have a chat with you guys. Last time I saw you, we were doing quite an intense workout. So it's nice just to be sitting in an egg chair this time, and yeah, just having a chat about all things mental health and training and, like you said, mindset and nutrition.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Well, I appreciate you being with us. And yeah, for those who didn't see, certainly yourself and our other guest, who Ed's going to introduce momentarily, were kind enough to join us and take part, as you said, in what was one of the Grand Slam live announcements. And in fact, missed opportunity, Bertus. We could have asked you to do a wall sit for the entire chat, couldn't we? None of this chair malarkey. No, but Liam, appreciate you being here. And with that said, Ed, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can introduce our next guest.
Yes, our next guest has a resume as long as my arm, and I'm a tall man. And it's one of those, he's one of those people that I have to selectively choose how I'm going to introduce somebody with so many achievements. But he's the 3 times F45 playoff champ. He also is the owner of 2 F45 facilities, the Lift by Day co-owner, and also in the realms of so much content on fitness and nutrition on the internet right now. He's really putting out some of the most valuable content I've seen, and I really enjoy following on the socials, and we'll talk to him about that as well. Of course, I'm speaking of Mr. Peter Day. Peter, welcome.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Matt. Thank you both so much for having myself along for tonight. And yeah, looking forward just to having a chat and to be speaking to everyone tonight. So thanks for having me.
Now, before we go on, gents, I feel like we should set the scene for our viewers, because there might be a few little underhand jabs between you two, because you two know each other very well. And I feel like that should be put on the table before we ask any more questions.
Absolutely. Like, myself and Liam have been good friends for quite a number of years now. And I think we both got that mindset of really challenging ourselves, pushing ourselves. Liam and I used to train here in Sydney a lot, multiple times a week. And it's so good to see him doing so well in obstacle course racing, which was a course which he chose probably 3 years ago and has gone so well. He's gone to the top of the game there as well. So I'm really excited to actually be on with Liam as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Liam, are you going to say something just as nice about Peter, or who's going to have the first go?
I'll have some digs later.
It's quite nicer to me, but yeah, we did used to train at F45 together, and we're both quite competitive. And I'm going to be honest, he was a hard man to beat, so I decided to change the game a little bit and focus on something that I could win at. But yeah, we're great mates, and we love to push each other every time we catch up for a workout. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And those that are tuning in might remember that last time we saw these two gents in this forum, they were working out in a partner workout together. Gentlemen, in both the intros we just heard, you've both got an enormous amount on your plates. And I can only imagine in normal times, in inverted commas, that your day-to-day existence must require a lot of focus to make sure that you're focused on one thing at a time, be that you're training in that moment or coaching somebody or developing your business. Has staying focused on one thing at a time over the last 3 or 4 months been a challenge? Peter, I might start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it is a challenging time, obviously. I guess for me personally, obviously I would regard myself as an athlete, a competitor, also a business owner, and very focused on a range of different things that I do day to day. So it has changed in a sense, but I think more importantly, it's highlighted a lot of things, a lot of protocols I would do previously, which actually help you get to where you are at the moment. And for me, it's such a challenging time for clients and for people that are trying to stay just generally fit and healthy, more so than, competing for events. And for us as I suppose as a business, we focus really heavily on making sure our clients are training day to day, they're getting the best out of it, because it is a tricky scenario, not just for myself. I know a lot of friends that compete training for the Olympics, for example. It's been really, really tricky for them to stay on top of their training at the top of their game, particularly in what was at one stage an Olympic year. And obviously it's just pushed a lot of things around, which has not helped, but I guess some of the positives from that one, a lot of people have reevaluated how lucky we are, which I think that's really important. I think we are very thankful in Australia for those watching from here to be in this country. And I think very thankful for what we're doing day to day as well. So it has made it a bit trickier. It's made it a bit more challenging for everyone, but at the same time, I think everyone's going to pull through, and they've done an amazing job, by the way, at pulling through.
Before I go to Liam on the same question, you're the owner of 2 F45 facilities. In terms of people being thankful, did you notice when you reopened the doors that was there a slightly different feel to the gratitude towards training and working out and having that opportunity?
Yeah, I think, well, interestingly, I was probably one of the most stressed during the initial lockdown, which we had in late March in Australia. And we did a lot of work around online workouts, and hence why the Bay Games also went online during that time as well. So there were some businesses which did really well. And we decided to focus our attention 100% on doing the best we can for our clients over that time. And we did that just to, do our best in that scenario. But when we open back up, absolutely, I think the energy at the moment from people helping each other out and also being really appreciative and just pushing themselves have been actually really, really, actually has been quite energetic for myself and quite really nice to see. So I do admit it was something I didn't really think about too much. And a lot of people were really excited to come in, start training again, and very thankful for it too. So yeah, like it was probably something I didn't think about during the lockdown phase, but it's been really nice to see, honestly.
Absolutely. Liam, could I throw to you back to that idea of focus again? When Matt introduced you, there's so many things that you've got on the table. How did you find that idea of staying focused throughout this time?
Yeah, well, it all came at a pretty tough time. We actually had our first race of our national series for obstacle course racing just as COVID started to hit Australia. So we were able to sneak in a race, and there was a lot of hard training that went in prior to that. But that being the first race of the 3-race series, all the races for the year were basically put on hold. So for myself, I train a lot of my mindset as well. So for me, I go out and stick to the same training program. It's just a really good way for me to like release everything, all that head noise, stuff like that, and keep fit. But for a few of our athletes, like Pete mentioned earlier, they train specifically for an event. So they were finding it hard to keep that mindset with no events on the horizon. So we definitely had a challenge in looking at a different strategy and how to keep them motivated. And that was for us doing online training as well, having challenges that we set to them as well, and also just making sure that they were communicating those small-term goals and long-term goals to us, and we were making sure that they were accountable for that as well. So we were kind of just trying to just give them a gentle push and let them know that all this time, although it is challenging for everybody, it's also a great time to, for instance, work on your running, work on your aerobic base, and just work on those weaknesses that you may not have time to do with your busy schedule before COVID. So just try and focus on the positives rather than negatives. And for a lot of our clients, they've managed to do that. So we're really happy that they're pulled through with a good strategy over the time. And there's starting to be a few races coming in now, just more so trail race. So we're just getting them to focus on their running.
I'm interested, Liam, you talk about motivation and absolutely how important it is to try and stay motivated. It was interesting for us with running the Grand Slam. I mean, we launched that back in March, but didn't run it till June, which was by design. And it was always intended to be an online event. And as it turned out, it was actually not bad timing from for the audience, for our community, let's say. And actually, when we did a Survey Monkey, how did we do kind of follow-up, an overwhelming answer to one of the questions for, why did you do it? What was your motivation? And overwhelmingly, people said it was an excuse to have something to focus on, and to train with a mate and compete with a mate. And I know that a lot of gym owners I spoke to in the last few weeks leading into when, in New South Wales at least, gyms were able to open again, there was a definite decline in the number of people engaging with the online training. And maybe Peter, in your case, to you first, A, was that a trend that you also saw? And B, do you therefore think something like online events, or like Liam talked about, running your own little mini challenges and really giving people bite-sized things they can focus on within the really near future? Do you think that's a strategy in case we see a second or further shutdown?
Yeah, so the initial answer for both those is absolutely. I think we had about a 12-week lockdown period here in New South Wales or in Australia, and I think after about 6-7 weeks, the amount of people that were training at home and online was starting to decline, and I think that was that restlessness, that period that people were going through. And obviously, we made the switch quite quickly, myself included, where we're training online. And I reiterate what Liam said, actually, my training focus, I actually shifted. I was in the middle of so for me, we're in an off season for the playoffs, so we wouldn't compete until later this year. I shifted my training into a more heavy load period during this time, which is more the intensities I would pick within my sessions. And during the lockdown period, I had to switch to a lower weight, higher volume, higher frequency type of training because of the live workouts we're doing, less access to equipment. Well, I'm lucky we had access to equipment, but it's very different when it's just yourself, and your training methodologies have to change. Plus we're running online workouts, which are bodyweight workouts, which we are actually doing. So that was actually part of my routine. So to answer your first question, yes, definitely we saw a decline in people's attention levels to online training, which I think is natural. Plus, people are so busy, even at this time. It's very stressful. You've got work commitments, you've got kids, that people are homeschooling. So it's a very stressful time for a lot of clients and a lot of people generally. So I totally understand that. Secondly, I think fatigue started to come into it. You obviously, there's a lot less you can do when you don't have equipment around you, you don't have music. And also, I suppose leading into your second question, absolutely. I think the lack of events and the lack of things to train for during this time, with myself included, plus with Liam, it is challenging and it is hard. I would regard myself as highly motivated, but I've seen extremely good athletes not drop off their training, but just have that lack of intense focus. They're still kind of going through the rhythm, but it's natural. It's challenging. You're at home. The Bay Games was a great example of an event coming up. That was probably one of the only events that was really during that time. And that, I remember the couple of weeks leading into that one actually gave me a new found focus during that time. So to answer your question, I don't think many sports events or anything was geared up for that. And there was a huge lull, even in those little events to keep you motivated. So absolutely to both questions.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you. I appreciate it. And Liam, anything you'd like to add to that from your perspective? Also, you've got a different audience, but I guess a similar situation.
Yeah, I would just say mainly for us, it focused around the no events, and there was a decline due to that as well. So people were finding it hard to not have that kind of milestone, that goal to hit, that race to train for. So they were, I guess, not putting as much time into the training, and just not working at the same work rate that they usually would. They might be doing 4 or 5 sessions a week with us, and they might be dropping that back to 1 and 2 and stuff like that. And that may have to do with homeschooling and the many things that came with COVID. But I think, for someone to train for a specific event, if you don't do it professionally, it just gives you that thing on the calendar that you have to be fit for, you have to be ready for. And just even something to do with a bunch of friends or family, good way to kind of bring everyone together and, train hard.
Gentlemen, I want to continue the conversation around motivation, because I think it's one that, I know this is a broad statement, but it's one as coaches and trainers that we hear often. It's just, I'm just not motivated. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Is motivation something that you always have to have, or is it something that you need to understand will come and go, and you just have to have the tools in place to deal with those moments when motivation isn't there? Peter, I might start with you on that one.
Yeah, thanks. It's a great question. I've actually got some strong views on this as well. So I'm a huge believer that your motivation levels will definitely spike and lower throughout the year. That's everyone. I've seen it happen with professional athletes. I know it happens with myself. Obviously you can get kick-started, but it's extremely hard to keep yourself motivated throughout a 12, 24 month period. And for a lot of people, you got to remember too, those which we geared up intellectually and our mindset just naturally as humans to have short-term ambitions and short-term goals. We're not geared up to think 12, 24 months, all that longer-term vision. And that's just because we've naturally been hunter-gatherers. So that's why those short-term goals, while they might be an event or something small coming up, kind of what Liam referred to earlier, while they might seem quite small or quite insignificant, they actually do help out with that short-term motivation, because motivation is short-term. Long-term motivation is, I don't think, it's not existent, but motivation is a short-term feeling, whereas habits are a long-term play. So it takes 21 days to build a habit. What I would say to everyone, including myself, athletes, or just people trying to lose weight, when you're in that mindset of being really motivated, you should do everything you can to get your habits up and running during that time, because that motivation will die down. And to be totally honest, what separates a lot of people from general gym goers to your athletes, the sessions where you're feeling really good and really motivated and you've had enough sleep and you can get off work at the right time, they're easy. They're not easy, but it's a lot easier to get it done. It's when maybe it's Thursday during the week, you've had a few early mornings, work stressful, the kids, you know, all those kind of pieces come into play, and you're not very motivated to go to the gym or to train, they're the sessions where it's really hard, and that's where your habits come in. So I think motivation is a short-term feeling, and your habits are what's really going to get you moving the longer term. That's the only thing that'll get you motivated over a longer period.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. And Liam, what are your thoughts on motivation there?
Yeah, I'd agree with Pete with that. Motivation is going to fluctuate throughout the year, depending on maybe the results you're getting, depending on how fit you are, whether you're sick, whether you've got an injury. It's always going to fluctuate. And I'm quite a firm believer in having that routine as well. So I think it's a lot harder to train discipline and routine than it is to keep that motivation coming. So we offer a training program where we basically tell our clients and whoever wants to jump on board and do some training what they're doing. We do it in a 4-week block. So they're keeping that routine over 4 weeks, but we're also mixing it up for them as well. So they're not looking at a training block and saying, oh, here's 12 weeks, like maybe lose a bit of motivation. But the main feedback we get from that is it's great that we're giving them, I guess, routine to do, so that they know no matter what they have to do for the day, that 2 hours has to be dedicated to doing that running training or doing that strength training or whatever we have on the program for them. So I think, yeah, having a good discipline as well as routine will get you through the tougher times and also help you just gain that motivation as well. I think the two kind of work well together.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly some interplay, I guess, between the habits can build some motivation as well. I want to ask you guys, it feels like at the moment there's a lot of good content out there about things that are important, and one of the things that we hear is important time and time again is remaining consistent, and being consistent is sort of the key. Because of the monotony of the days that we have during isolation, consistency is one of those things that's actually able to be built over this time. Is that part of habits and routine, building consistency? And is consistency as important as what people sort of talk about? Peter, again, I'll start to you, and Liam, get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, sure. So firstly is absolutely, I think consistency, you are what you consistently do. And I mean, guys like Michael Phelps, for example, he never missed a training session in something like 15 years, including Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and all the rest of it. So what you do over a longer period of time has compounding benefits to your results, as opposed to short-term bursts of training blocks. But short-term bursts of training blocks, like what Liam has, for example, in his 4-week blocks, will help you in that short-term motivation to keep you moving during that time and keep you active during that time. So the power of a subconscious mind versus a conscious mind is much stronger. And I use this example quite often, and I'll even plug Cosmorex, who are your sponsors for this as well. But it's a coffee example I use when I do seminars. I'm a coffee drinker. I love drinking coffee, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this do as well. I will drink coffee at the same time every single day from the same cafe, even if I'm not tired. Why? It's because it's my habit. I don't even think about it. I'll get up, I'll be perfectly fine, had a great sleep. I'll go to the cafe, get the same coffee, even if I'm not tired. Heck, I'd probably order the same thing. I probably want to go to the same, all those kind of things come into play when it comes to coffee as an example of habits. It's not because I'm tired, it's because it's what I'm used to. It's easier to try to train. When I say easier, people are more likely, and this is done from research, to train every single day than to train every second day. Now, the reason is because if I know I'm training every day, I've got to train because it's just another day. If you train every second day, you give yourself that option to kind of step out because you can always train the next day. So you might miss 2, train 1, miss 1, train 1. So it becomes an inconsistency within your routine. What I think happened with this whole lockdown situation is that all of a sudden you've just broken everyone's routine, including myself, including professional athletes, AFL players, NRL players, all the rest of it. And you see this within professional sports at the moment with higher rates of injury, because even though these are some of the most motivated, in fact, it's their full-time job to train, they've gone through a period where they're at home. Yes, they had the ability to be able to build a routine during that time, but the external factors of the environment aren't as easy to do that. Even people who had home gyms, they're not as convenient as a gym anywhere else. And that becomes an extra challenge, which isn't normally thrown in the mix. We're seeing a lot of more injuries as people start to come back. It's probably flattened a little bit now, but it's because they weren't in that training routine. Their muscles weren't used to taking the hits if it was rugby, for example, and their bones weren't as strong during that time as well. So they've kind of lost a little bit of that strength. They just need to build it back up, which is the whole reason why I have pre-seasons. So yeah, the importance of consistency is the utmost importance. And I think the fact that everything went into lockdown completely threw everyone's routines out of whack. Everyone watched this, I'm sure, would agree. And this is the same with work routines as well as training.
Absolutely. Liam, can you add to consistency on that? Thank you for that, Peter.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Pete did a great job of covering it there, but I'd just like to, agree with the point of consistency in regards to just keeping that same routine. We had the same thing with injuries. So we had people that were doing that 2 days on, 2 days off kind of training, and they were coming to us with injuries or not getting the same results, and just finding it hard to just track their training as well. So, and it was hard for us as well, because we would say, did you do your session on the Wednesday? Oh no, I did it on the Friday. And that just throws the whole thing out of whack for not only us as a coach, but for them as well. And yeah, I think sometimes they find it hard to get back into where they were. Whereas if you just keep that same consistency, you'll just surprise yourself what you can achieve. So yeah, I think it plays a huge role in training, recovery, and definitely nutrition as well.
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation very much, and I know we're kind of focusing it around being in a lockdown situation, but I think personally it's equally applicable to those, as Peter talked about, those phases that we go through where we're perhaps less motivated. We're at the bottom of the trough, looking up, and I just wonder whether it's equally applicable, not just in lockdown. Therefore, what we're talking about is, I mean, Peter, both of you, I'm keen to get your thoughts about creating new routines. If you find yourself in a lull and lacking a bit of motivation, it sounds like actually that there's merit in creating some new routines, and maybe these 4-week blocks. If let's say we were going back into a shutdown, and let's say it's another 12 weeks, I don't know, but let's just use that as an example. Have we not got then 3-4 week blocks? And actually we could approach it from that perspective, both mentally and with our coaches. And I guess revitalize that period and use it as an excuse to create new routines. Peter, what do you think around that?
Yeah, I actually completely agree with everything you just said. I think it is such an opportunistic time, because you do have the opportunity to be able to create new routines, and think of it like a 3 or 4 week block rather than I'm not sure, completely changes the perspective. And that was, I actually said this at the start of the lockdown. I said that this is an opportunity where you're going to have X amount of time, and everyone's going to come out of this with a story, whether your story to yourself, whether you said at the start is it's too hard, I can't train at home, or whether your story is I'm going to make it my opportunity to lose weight or to increase my fitness. For me personally, I was trying to increase my cardiovascular fitness during this time. So what I was trying to do was I was trying to add higher intensity sessions, but also make sure I was getting my heart rate up, less weighted workouts, but it gave me an idea to have that training block during that time as well. So I think if people were to look at that and say, I've got 3-4 weeks to do this, it's the best thing to do. One of the challenges which a lot of people had was the fact that it was massively inconvenienced during this time. And a lot of people, they didn't use it as an excuse. I don't think that anyone was doing that. But when it becomes a want to a need, and when that motivation is there to really change it, that's when people make those big changes that they need to. You need to take massive action to get massive results. So when it became a want and people really, really wanted to do, when it became a need, I should say, that's when people really snapped into it. And I think looking at it from a shorter block, a 2, 3, 4 week block, absolutely refocuses you on trying to do things day in, day out. And I think one of the challenges a lot of people had was, I think that change, that switch. If the gym's closed Monday, Tuesday, you need to start it, because as soon as you change your routine and you miss a week or 2 weeks, it actually throws you out quite a lot. And I'm sure a lot of people watching would know that from their own experience. And it becomes really hard to start up again. It's like coming back from holidays and coming back into training. Even if it's a week off, it's really hard. So that routine needs to swap, or it needs to change quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Peter. And Liam, I'll come to you in a moment. And actually, Ed might next time around come to you first, so you get a chance to, rather than just saying, well, yeah, everything Peter said, which I understand.
Every time I ask a question, Liam's been speaking for 5 minutes, so I'm trying to give him a break. So sorry about that, Liam. We'll come to you first. Sorry to cut you off, Matt. Go ahead.
No, for sure. Before we come to you, Liam, we have got some people live in the Zoom room, and what I would do, if you've got questions, I would encourage you, pop them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. There are both options within Zoom. And for sure, we're going to hook you up with these guys. We'll get you online, and if you don't want to, tell us and we'll just ask your question for you. But hey, the whole point of this thing is to get you on here and you can talk to these legends yourself. So don't sit there quietly. Please join in, ask questions, and we'll get you in here. But in the meantime, Yeah, Liam, what were your thoughts around that last question?
Yeah, I would say looking around the 4-week block program, it's a great time to work on your weaknesses. And it's a big thing we did ask people, what do you not work towards? What do you not train? And how can we help you better yourself in those areas? And even if those areas are something you don't want to do for the year, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is, it's 4 weeks to knuckle down, do that strength training that you might be missing, or those sessions you're skipping, and just stay accountable for 4 weeks. It's a lot easier to stay accountable over a shorter amount of time, and it's easier for us to track their training as well. And then, yeah, not to touch on the motivation too much, but it also does bring a bit of motivation. Just, yeah, I've got that goal. It's 4 weeks. I'm going to smash it out and get it done. So,
yeah, I understand. And is that something you have traditionally done? Have you been doing that, or is it maybe looking forward if we are heading headlong into another lockdown? Maybe there's some lessons learned for all of us about how we can mix it up next time, let's say.
Yeah, I've focused on it before the whole COVID thing as well, because I think it's really important. Like, I guess one thing I focus on a lot, and I tell a lot of people in my sport, is don't strive for that massive goal straight away. Work your way towards it. Put those smaller steps, those smaller goals in place, and just let your body, I guess, get yourself to those goals. A big thing I find is people try and set the bar really high. I want to be the best in Australia at obstacle course racing. I want to be the best at F45, and that's probably going to come with a lot of injuries and a lot of heartache as well. So a big thing we like to communicate with them is keep those small steps. We can guide you towards them as well, but at the same time, just don't set the bar too high. And I think back to COVID, with COVID being on, a lot of people did have that time just to reflect on that as well, and just have a little bit more time to think about what they wanted to achieve with those events not in the near future. They were able to work on those steps in whether it be 4 weeks, the 5 week, 6 week programs they were on. So, yeah.
Liam, I'm going to miss my opportunity to ask you a question first again, because we're actually going to throw to somebody who we have in the Zoom room. I believe we've got Michael, and Michael's going to ask a question for you guys about some competition nutrition. Michael, are you with us?
I think we're just getting Michael into the Zoom room, and certainly, yeah, his question is around nutrition, which of course is another sort of key topic, isn't it? When we think about a lockdown situation or a lack of, a phase of lower motivation. Certainly people's diet, their nutrition is one of the things that also falls over, and different habits are formed, let's say, or returned to. So yeah, I'm kind of pleased that Michael is asking that question. Not sure.
Well, I'm going to butt in then, and I'm going to ask my question to...
Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Oh, you've got it. Okay, good.
Got Michael.
Hello.
Hey, Michael.
Oh, he was there. Oh, he's coming back. The joy of live. He's coming.
Hang on. Sorry.
No worries, Michael. We can't see you at the moment.
Hey.
There we go.
Hey,
Michael. Good to have you here, mate.
I know, Liam. How are you?
Michael, where are you coming to us from, mate? Where are you?
I'm from Kirrawee in New South Wales in the Sutherland Shire. So just calling from the
You're
Shire.
a Shire boy. Nice to have you.
I've actually registered for the boot camp in September, so I'm looking forward to it.
Sure have. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to having you down here, mate. It'll be a great weekend.
Accommodation's booked, everything's ready to go. So it's just who knows with what's going on. Anyway.
Absolutely fantastic. And your question, go fire, Michael. The stage is yours.
Okay. What are your nutritional strategies before, during, and after an event? No matter what it is, either F45 or obstacle course racing or even running. So I know these athletes well, so it would be interesting to see both points.
Who would you like to direct that to first? Let's go Liam, mate. Liam needs to go on one of these.
Team Liam.
Again, I think this falls back to habit, consistency. You can throw the whole bag of things into it. My nutrition is the same throughout the whole year. I don't track my calories because I burn quite a lot, but I'm just making sure I'm getting in that intake, making sure I'm getting in the right nutrients and stuff like that. It's very much the same. So it's pretty much, for myself, I eat probably 70–80% vegetarian, the rest being a little bit of fish and a little bit of chicken here and there. The lead up to a race, depending on the distance in the race, I might slightly alter that in my carb intake. Whether if it's a 50K race or a 20K race, that's just going to slightly change. But for myself, I can't stomach too much food before a race. So I'm as simple as some whole grain bread with peanut butter, honey and banana. I know Pete's nodding because he's a big fan of the peanut butter, but I find most of the calories I'll take during a race will sit on my stomach a little bit easier, which will be the liquid calories. But yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and it's figure out what works best for you, what sits well with your stomach, what helps you get your results and you're able to perform during your training. I think I think everyone's body is different, so just figuring out what works best for you is the best way forward with that. But yeah, just keep it consistent. Don't try something different before race day because it could end horribly wrong.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
I'll pass it on to Peter.
Let's go.
The thing with asking Liam the first question is I'm never sure if he's going to finish. He loves talking.
and we're off.
I was going to give him a bit of shit earlier, but I'll keep going first with the questions. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Great question. And it's probably something which I undervalued for the junior part of my career, I suppose you call it. I used to do a lot of swimming and soccer. Swimming was probably the event a bit closer to what I'm doing at the moment. It was more of a fitness sporting event. And I undervalued the importance of nutrition until I was probably 22, 23. I'm 29 now. So I've completely shifted the way I look at nutrition and exactly what you was talking about with before, during, and after. So I very much segment my training and my nutrition in a very similar spot. So I talk about, or what I do is in my off season, which is now at the moment, I go through heavy training splits. So when I say heavy training, I'll do some which is more focused on putting on exercise, putting on extra muscle, and some which is focused on more increasing my conditioning. You can't, in the sports that I do, I would regard myself as a fitness athlete, predominantly with F45, but I also do compete in other events around the year. So for me, I need to be agile, fit, and strong while being flexible all at the same time. So there's a few different pieces that I'm looking at. And in my off season, where I'm training quite hard and quite strong and trying to really increase the intensity that I'm training, trying to increase my fitness, whether all my strength, I really will typically stick to the same protein targets all year round. So kind of what Liam said, my protein targets are roughly the same all year round, about 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. But what I'll do is I'll up my calories quite a lot. So I'll start aiming towards 3.5, sometimes 3.8 in terms of calories. And most of that's coming from carbohydrates because that's what's going to replenish you. It's going to give you increased glycogen supplies. So I'll do that during the whole off season, I suppose you call it. I will actually dial my carbs back down as I start to put on a little bit of weight. And that's just to maintain body fat and weight and all the rest of it. Not that, when you're burning that much, it doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's also important to fluctuate your carbs in particular. If you're having a lot of carbs all year round, your body gets used to having this kind of glycogen supply. So marathon runners do this quite a lot, where they'll actually go into a carb depletion period during their training phase, because then your body has to adapt to having low amounts of carbohydrates. And I don't go to that extreme because my sport's not as endurance. It's actually a lot closer to anaerobic. A lot of people think that, F45 or CrossFit or things like the Bay Games is quite an aerobic sport. It is to a degree, but you need both elements there. So I'll stick to a high calorie intake with increased carbs during my off season. The week leading into event, I will taper off my carbohydrates in particular, keeping my protein targets all year round. And then the morning of, I've changed this quite significantly. So when I'm doing the playoffs, for example, in my sporting events, I'll have a big breakfast as I normally would, which I stick to generally no meat in that meal. So I'm talking more grains like what Liam has. I will have eggs and all the rest of it. And then it's quite interesting, probably the 3 to 4 hours before the event, I actually swap my diet over. So I'll actually start to have a lot more simple carbs and caffeine. So really simply caffeine, well, I have caffeine all year round, but simple carb things like lollies and those kind of, in Powerade, Gatorade, those kind of things sit better in my stomach. Plus, it gives me that insulin spike or that energy spike within my blood, which actually really helps for my event. If I go in on a full stomach, it does not help me. So I need to not eat probably 3-4 hours beforehand, and be having just those insulin spikes to keep my blood sugar levels high, keep my energy levels high. And that really helps me during the actual event itself, and obviously lots of water. And then post-event, flip back into a high carbohydrate meal as well, really replenishing. So the next day in particular, I'll have quite a large meal and obviously decrease my training to increase my, my glycogen supplies in particular. But yeah, very much throughout the off season, high carbohydrates, high calories, down it a little bit in the week beforehand. And then the day of, very much kind of going with a bit of an empty stomach, to be totally honest with you. And that really helps me out for my event.
Michael, thanks so much for your question. Anything else you'd like to ask the boys before I send them another question from someone else who's tuning in?
No, not at all. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for answering the question.
Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Gents, I've got another question for you, and it's another nutrition-based question, and it's from Beck Downey. Thank you so much, Beck. And it says...
Actually, Ed, I think we're going to bring Beck in if we...
Oh, we are? Okay, excellent.
Yeah, we're going to get Beck in. And she can...
All right, Beck, are you with us?
And Michael, you're welcome to stay in. More the merrier.
Beck looks like she's jumping online.
But by the way, Michael, about the boot camp, if things don't head in the right direction, we should still be okay because we've capped the numbers that we're going to get at the boot camp.
That's fine. Looking forward to it as well. Need to practice on the swimming, but got to start somewhere.
Well, we'll have the two-time Olympic gold medalist Felicity Lemke there to help you get the swimming under control, along with our local professional triathlete Matt Lewis to do some open water skills training as well. So you're in good hands that weekend, let me tell you.
Beautiful, not a problem. Looking forward to it.
We seem to have lost Beck, so hopefully she jumps on in a moment. But I'll ask her a question, and then if she wants to add anything or follow up to it, she says, "Gents, since being in lockdown and working from home, I'm finding motivation for exercise and training really high, and I have a lot more time to focus on it. However, I'm struggling to maintain a healthy diet and avoid poor food choices. Any advice on sticking to a healthier diet that will benefit my training and my goals during this time?" Liam, let's start with you.
Again, I think getting in that good routine, working towards that discipline, and also it's only going to aid you and help you push harder in your training. You'll find, and it's something that I tell a lot of people, is you'll find your body will react a lot better. Your recovery will be a lot faster from eating, healthy, as well as having more energy as well. So to start, I would just keep it simple and maybe just add in a few things each week. Keep away from the takeaway foods. They're never good. And just do a big shop at the start of the week. Have a few meals planned. So big thing around planning. That way you're sticking to that routine. You've got your meals planned, whether you're doing a meal prep, if it's easier for you on a Sunday just to prep all your meals for the week. I know a lot of people do that. If not, just get creative as well when you go to the shop. So get a whole bunch of fresh fruit, veg, and protein, and just cook up some really delicious meals. So that would be my my recommendation. And just start small if it's easier, and just work towards getting in that routine. 21 days, I think Pete said, so it's not long.
And Pete, throwing over to you, mate. What advice can you? And I think we've almost got Beck with us. I think she is with us. I'm hoping she can hear us. What advice on sticking to a healthier diet that will benefit her training and goals during this time?
Liam's quoting me now to keep my answers shorter, I think. I think, well, firstly, Beck, that's amazing that you're extra motivated and focused during this time. Like you're already ahead of a lot of people. So that's brilliant. So you should absolutely ride that motivation as best you can. When you are motivated, I wasn't meant to be, obviously talking about consistency before, ride that motivation as long as you can. Some tricks and tips I would highly recommend is that go to the shops when you're in a good fitness mindset. And what I mean by that, maybe eat something healthy, maybe train, and then go straight to do your shops at Coles, Woolworths, wherever you shop. Because what I find with a lot of people is you'll purchase, what you basically eat whatever you have in your fridge or whatever you have in your pantry. So removing those pieces stops you with that temptation basically to go eat the chocolate that you have in there. So if you shop when you've just done a training session, for example, you're normally in a better state to be able to make those decisions. So when you do get to snacking out during the day as well, you've got grapes there instead of chocolate as an example. So making sure you know what you're having in terms of your snacks. When you're working from home, you have a tendency a lot higher to snack because the fridge is right there. So I totally understand where you're coming from. It is challenging. So what I'd recommend is with your snacks, have something like grapes in place, which is again, a nice healthy thing to do. Do your shopping earlier on so that way, where you're in a good mindset, I should say. And like Liam said, have some meals planned out. Otherwise, have a whole meal plan planned out for you. Because if you know what you're eating beforehand, obviously that helps a lot more. But it's that snacking that I think a lot of people are struggling with. So if you just remove those as much as you can, you're actually going to help yourself. And you can do that when you're in a good state. That way you don't have to say no to that chocolate, multiple times a day. So that would be the kind of quick tips I would recommend.
Sorry, could I just quickly touch on something else that I just remembered? I just had my parents visit and they've both lost a fair bit of weight and mainly due to nutrition. So no plug here, but I put them onto MyFitnessPal. And they've been tracking what they eat, and they found it, I guess, quite interesting to see the amount of calories in the food they're taking. Sometimes you might have something as simple as peanut butter on toast to not realize how many calories are in it, and you're having that a few times a day. So it's a great app just to track what you're eating, what your required calories would be for the day, and just making sure you're staying underneath that. So I know Pete's quite big on that as well, and or as simple as getting on a nutrition program.
I think that's it's such good advice. I think having used MyFitnessPal, and it's right, it's a great, lots of people do, and it's a great app, and it's free, can be free. And I think as long as as soon as you have to write down, or in this case track, what you're eating, it really makes you think about it. That's the point. If you're diligent about it, if you're strict with yourself and honest with yourself, it really makes you think about what you're putting in your mouth. But one thing, I transitioned over to a plant-based diet some years ago now, but I remember at the time when I removed, the hardest thing for me was removing dairy. Meat wasn't such a big deal for me, but dairy, because it's in so many products, was trickier, let's say. And I liked cheese, a good cheese board, the smellier the better. But I found that rather than thinking about it being a restrictive diet that I was adopting, I simply displaced, because I was taking on new, healthier foods, it naturally displaced some of the less healthful or optimal foods. And I found that really helpful from a psychological perspective, because it's rather, it's not that I can't have that, but now there's not really room for that, because I've taken this on and it's kind of pushed that off to the side. And Peter, I don't know if that resonates with you or not, but certainly as a psychology, that was something that I found really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, when you start to switch your mindset from just eating, not just eating for the sake of it, but like for me personally, everything I eat is about getting me ready for the next session. So I know that if I don't have a good meal after I've worked out in particular, I'm not as ready as I could be for that next day. And I'm training 10, 12 times a week. So we're talking quick turnarounds. So going back to Beck's example, if she's quite motivated to train, she might be training daily. So the amount you eat and what you eat and what time you eat and what quality of food you eat, whether that be a vegetarian, whether it be, it doesn't matter what diet it is, but so long as it's a good quality in terms of the macronutrients that you're eating, it's going to help you and put you in a good stead for that next one. So kind of going back onto your point, when you change your mindset around, the word diet has such a bad connotation in the industry because it just feels like, green smoothies and carrots and all the rest of it. You can eat very well and very healthy and good tasting foods, like what Liam said earlier, with a good diet. A lot of people as well that I'm finding is they'll often eat their foods and they're healthy foods, but they're eating too much. Now, this is also an issue because you can eat too much of good food or healthy food, and you're still in a calorie surplus. You're still going to put on weight, even if it is chicken, broccoli, rice. So there's also that part too. So I completely agree with you. And the psychological connection you have with food is super crucial. And we all know this from the research which is coming out. So flipping that mindset around and making it a healthy and delicious food is the best thing you can do for long term. Yeah,
no, thank you. Absolutely. Liam, do you want to add to that?
yeah, just get creative. Like there's some nice desserts you can do that still can, I guess, fix that sweet tooth of yours, whether it be a bit of fruit or yeah, a lot of like protein based desserts these days are coming out, and just make sure you know what's going into it as well. Always have a read of the label. I've got nothing over 5 ingredients. If it's a dessert, try and stay underneath that, or just chuck in a load of fruit and make sure you brush your teeth before bed after that.
Good advice.
Gentlemen, I've got a question for both of you. You're both world-class, world champion athletes, and often people sometimes think, oh, well, it's easy for people of that high level to give advice or think about this. But what we see about, or the term everyday athlete really is meant to help people understand that all this advice can be of benefit to anybody, irrespective of where they are on that spectrum of high level world-class athlete to person just starting out with exercise. The question I'd like to ask you guys is, do you think everybody should potentially set their mind on competing? And I don't necessarily mean trying to aim for a world championship, but the idea of challenging yourself and entering some sort of formal competition. Do you think that's something that most people would benefit from, if not all people? Liam, I'll start with you.
I think it depends what sport you're in. I think that might be tough if you are in a sport that those events might be hard to do, or what area you live in as well. But I think it's great to work towards something. So if you can sign yourself up for a race, if you've never done a run before, like I know thousands and thousands of people do the City to Surf. Some of them probably never run 14Ks in their life, but they get it done. They have the training to get there on the day as well. And it just keeps that focus as well. So yeah, I definitely would agree with you on that. I think it's a great mindset to be in. Just having something to focus towards. And I think that will maybe steer them clear of whether or not they change their nutrition or they stop training on the Tuesday at the gym or the Wednesday at the gym. They just constantly got that thing in the back of the mind that they don't want to let themselves down, and be proud of what they've done as well. So, yeah,
I really love that. Be proud of Liam. Peter, can you add to Liam's point there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you asked was kind of a two-part question, I suppose. So the first one was around, terminologies and does it resonate with people? I've actually changed, particularly when I'm online and doing my, Instagrams and YouTubes and whatnot, around the terminologies that I use, because I used to try to almost but I used to say the term think of an athlete, train like an athlete, think like an athlete. While I completely think that's true, because we are all athletes in our own rights, and that's where, the term everyday athlete comes into play. A lot of people I found, general population, can sometimes switch off when you start talking about that kind of thing, or when you start talking about recovery, or, the terminology I think is really important, because it does make sense and it does work, and everything an athlete does can be adopted to anyone within that journey. But the terminologies that personal trainers use, I think is really important, because you can switch a lot of people off very quickly if you don't speak to them in the right language. So I think that's really important. And a lot of people sometimes, it depends on the audience and what the kind of question is, but I try to talk some things where everyone can kind of understand and feel a part of it, and other things which is a bit more technical towards my sport. And I do that very purposely. So yes, it can sometimes not play in your favor, but at the same time, I think it can be utilized. Second part of that question is absolutely, I think everyone can get motivated from an event, or can get motivated from doing a competition. And I think every single person, doesn't matter where you are in your journey, has a trigger or something that motivates them. And for a lot of people, it isn't necessarily competing, but everyone loves a bit of competition, and the person their favorite competition is themselves. And what I mean by that is, you've done the City Surf in Liam's example, you've done it 1 year, never run before, and you did it in, let's say, 2 hours or whatever it might be. The next year, all of a sudden, that's your goal. You can beat yourself. Everyone knows they can. So that becomes the trigger and the point for where they can kind of go into. And that's why a lot of competitions, I think, which encourages people just to do it and not have that, necessarily that competition of going head to head, I think is really important, because a lot of people don't want to do that, but they still want to have the thrill of it. So yes, I think absolutely, I think sometimes taking the pressure off for some people is a really good thing, a really nice thing, because it gets people doing it. And the higher the participation rates, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons that we switched with the Grand Slam, for example, from year one, which is an individual athlete, everyday athletes event, we made it pairs this year, as you know, because the two of you were kind enough to be in a team, albeit remotely, doing it over Zoom, which is cool. But we had so much feedback from everyone going how awesome it was to compete, to therefore train and then compete with a mate, and how motivating that was, and how much more accountable they felt. I mean, is that something as well that you think from a motivation perspective can really help rather than just trying to slog it out on your own?
Absolutely. I think training as a team and also working together as a team and competing at a team is probably one of the most powerful things you can do. I used to play a lot of soccer when I was a kid or into my 20s. So I used to be a semi-professional soccer player, and I love that whole team atmosphere. You can't give up. You're in it together. And that does motivate you to a level which a lot of, it's quite hard to get to that. And when you're training, when you're doing individual sport, it can be quite lonely. Like as a swimmer or as a soccer player, I know Liam's sport, my own sport, like it often you're training on your own, long hours. It can be quite challenging. And I find that, especially for the general population, if you're doing it with someone, you're much less likely to let them down. It's like having a training buddy. You're more likely to go there. If I said, hey, Liam, get your butt to the gym on Monday, he's going to go. He's not going to want to let me down. Of course, he wants to train anyway. But yeah, I think that accountability is crucial when it comes to, achieving big things.
And a lot of people, I know myself included, I like competing in pairs or teams of four. I find it's more fun. Yes, I work harder. I feel accountable to my teammates and so on, but I just find it more enjoyable. Somehow, the accountability creates a good pressure, whereas competing individually, well, the spotlight's on you, and sometimes, unless that's what you do for a living, that's not necessarily where you want to be when you're not at work. I mean, historically, I've got a corporate background, and I was in a business development role running teams, and it was every day there was life in business was a competition, and therefore I kind of appreciated not to have to be sharp end of the pointy end of the stick, let's say, in my downtime as well. But I still appreciated to compete and have some fun with mates. But Liam, how about, as Peter said, I mean, like him, yours is very much an individual sport, even though you have a support team around you, of course, a whole ecosystem of support. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, although my sport is individual, I have competed in a team at a World Championship event, and that was my first event that I'd ever done, I guess, other than being an individual. So it was actually a great experience because there was a big sense of you don't want to let your teammate down. One of our teammates actually had a really bad knee, and coming into the race, he was just numbing cream on it, whatever. It was a 24-hour race as well, so it wasn't a short race. But he just knew for that 24 hours, didn't want to let his teammate down. And although he wasn't running as quick as he would have liked and anticipated, he was just grueling his way through the 24 hours. And that really gave us a sense of to push harder as well. It was actually quite an amazing event, and with I think maybe 2 hours to go, we had a 2-lap lead, and just on our own competitiveness, we just went out for another lap to finish it off. So that was just a feeling I've never experienced before, and I think going to a lot of these events as well, I do see a lot of people that have trained together as a team, and I think that sense of you don't want to let your teammate down plays a huge role in that. And it's there's nothing more that gets me fired up than seeing a bunch of mates doing a race together and high-fiving and stuff like that, and doing stuff they probably thought they never could do. So
awesome. I imagine as well that it's in races like that where I imagine you pull together more tightly than ever as a team and created some bonds that are unbreakable, probably.
There's definitely some unbreakable bonds, and a few things that stay at the event between.
In 24 hours, there can be a lot of conversation that's not for anywhere but that 24 hours.
There is one teammate that I'm sure if he's listening, he's probably not going to appreciate this, but coming into the last lap, we had one lap to go each, and we were kind of trying to hit a record. and he was really sick, really bad stomach. As you can anticipate, running for 24 hours with quite a high amount of sugar, your stomach can completely go turmoil on you. And he was running, basically just holding on for dear life. I'm not sure, he'd never admitted to us how that lap went, but yeah, he got we got him out of the tent, and yeah, it gave me a sense, like I had a bad ankle as well, and it gave me a sense of, you know what, he's just gotten up out of the tent, pretty much sick as, crook guts, and I don't care how much pain I'm going to be in this last lap, but I'm just going to get it done. And it's just a huge sense of accomplishment and proud of what we all achieved. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it anymore. If you guys think anyone listening is thinking about doing a team event or training as a team or joining a run club, a gym, whatever it is, there's nothing better. The endorphins are extremely high in that environment. So yeah.
Well, Liam, you've thrown a teammate under the bus, but I reckon you two boys have done well to not throw each other under the bus for the last hour. Gents, we're going to wrap this up very shortly, and there's just been so much gold, and I hope people who weren't able to tune in get the chance to listen back to this. But is there any last messages or any last thoughts that you guys would like to share with the community about training, nutrition, or anything specific to this time? Peter, let's start with you. I'll flick back to getting Peter to answer first.
Thanks, Ed. No, I think really generally for most people, I think now's a really good time to really evaluate where you are and really start to focus on what's that next step and what's that next kind of focus for you guys to be able to redirect your energy towards. So if you are looking at, because a lot of people admittedly are coming back from a lull, even professional athletes, everyone's in the same boat. Now, I talk to a lot of people, gym goers, athletes, friends, myself, all the rest of it. And it has been a tricky time, and it will probably be a bit tricky for a little bit longer as well, but really trying to evaluate where you are. Don't be too hard on yourself mentally. I think at this point in time, your mental health is super important. So making sure that you are doing it for the right reasons, you're getting back into it. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you put on a few extra kgs, it's not a big deal whatsoever. No one's going to, point the finger and say, oh my God, so-and-so put on a couple of kilos over this isolation period. It's totally normal. As I said, you can see professional athletes getting out of their routines. So you can imagine what it's like for the general person going to the gym or just trying to stay healthy. Now's a really great time to reevaluate where you are, have a bit of fun with it again, get back into training with some people, whether it be at the gym. Events are great. I'm going to plug the Bay Games. Everything you guys are doing is brilliant. A great example of somewhere you can redirect that energy towards outside of your day-to-day training routine as well. So it's a really great time to do that. Have some fun with it. And please don't be too hard on yourself. If you have done it, just get back into that routine and start having some fun again with your training.
Absolutely. And Liam, your any final thoughts for our listeners?
I'd just say, take as much time as you can now in between your schedules, whatever you're doing, and just see if you can start to build that routine. Again, a lot of people I've been finding have been quite hard on themselves. I'm not as fast as I was. I've put on this amount of weight. It's a tough time for everybody. Everyone's routine is slightly changed. People haven't been working, gyms are closed, stuff like that. So I think it's a good time to rebuild. Give yourself enough time to get back to where you were. Like Pete said, don't be hard on yourself. You may be in a better spot than you were before. You may not be, but it doesn't matter. You've got the time now, and just have fun with what you're doing. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, change it up. Work towards another goal. Contact someone. The great thing about social media is these days you can send someone a message. If there's an athlete you want to speak to, if there's someone you follow that inspires you, just send them a message, and a lot of the time they're going to get back to you and maybe just give you that right direction or that little bit of motivation, just to help you get to your goals. And just have fun with it. Don't be hard on yourself at all.
Such good advice, thank you. And as Ed said, nuggets of gold littered throughout the last 60 minutes, as we've talked about the importance of consistency, mindset, routines, and nutrition. When we kicked off, we also touched on the great work Are You OK is doing. And given where we're at, for everyone watching now or in the future, let's all be vigilant. Let's keep an eye on our loved ones and our mates. When you notice a change, no matter how small, trust your gut and ask, are you okay? And then really importantly, follow up with that conversation. If you're concerned about someone and you're not sure how to have that conversation, the team at Are You OK are ready to support you and have a whole heap of information on their website. You can just Google Are You OK or go to our website where you can find the link as well. with that said, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our broadcast partner, Cosmorex Coffee, and of course to our guests, Peter and Liam. A huge thank you for joining us tonight from Ed and myself. Until next time, as Peter said, be kind to yourselves, but also be brave, have fun, and lead by example.